How you doing? And welcome back to another video on the channel. So it's a really popular time to wildcard in FPL, and I've got a 99% rated team for you here today to help you if you're planning on doing that. Even if you're not, hopefully it helps you with your thoughts moving forward regarding free transfers. And if it does, please do consider subscribing, post your comments of your thoughts. I do create all my own charts to try and help visualize the data and what I'm thinking. So if you do enjoy that, any support would be really appreciated. I am recording this video before Sunday's games have kicked off, so anyone who gets injured or if there's any changes, I will post some alternative players in the comments. I do discuss some different options throughout, so let's get into it. And first of all, because it is 99% rated, shout out to Fantasy Football Hub for their team rater tool. It is a fantastic rating for any team, but it's not the be all and end all. You do need to combine it with the eye test and your own personal preference for certain players. I think it's a fantastic start for this wildcard team. The value does come in at a little bit above 100 million at 100.2. And whilst that's not ideal, there are some players in this team that you will probably already own that have gone up in price, and therefore it's saved you some team value and you could still afford this. So I do think it's likely that a lot of people can afford this team, which is great. So let's take a look at the goalkeepers. And I've gone for David Raya. Nothing groundbreaking here in terms of goalkeepers. Arsenal's fixtures do swing in the near future, and everyone's going to be wanting to get them in their team. Because you are wildcarding, it does mean you've got reduced flexibility in future game weeks, and you definitely don't want to be using a free transfer on a goalkeeper. So you've got to be happy with who you're getting in. And David Raya is that player. Even if Arsenal have tough fixtures, they've shown that they can keep clean sheets with 3 out of 4 so far this season, only conceding 1 goal. And Dubravka is on the bench. I think it's great to have Dubravka as your sub goalkeeper, just in case Raya gets injured. You want to have a goalkeeper on your bench that you know is going to play. That's also super cheap, and Dubravka is that guy. When we take a look at the data with saves per game versus total points, we can see that Raya does fall under the 3 saves per game line, and that's only really because he had a game where he just made 1 save and it took his average below. He does tend to get you those 3 saves more often than not and get you that extra point. Now, all of the charts here, they just include the data for the first 4 game weeks. I haven't got game week 5 data here because, like I said at the start of the video, not all players have played, and it would be a little bit unfair and distort the charts quite a lot if we gave and included those game week 5 information because some players have had an extra game to score points rather than others, and it would just wouldn't give accurate readings. So, other than Raya, I think Rose and Vicario are only really the 2 better goalkeepers at the moment than him. And do I see the Sunderland goalkeeper outscoring the Arsenal goalkeeper come the end of the season? Absolutely not. I think Raya has shown time and time again that he is one of the best goalkeepers in FPL, and he's worth that price. He is the cheapest way into the Arsenal defence as well. And whilst he might not get you that high ceiling of points, you do just want those players who are going to keep ticking along that are so reliable, you know what you're getting. So into the defence, and I've gone for the Arsenal double up. It will be an interesting discussion as to which Arsenal players you get. Do you go double attack? Do you go double defence? I've gone double defence here, and it might be a surprise that I've gone for Calafiori rather than a Gabriel or a Saliba. I think Calafiori does give you fantastic attacking threat, and I think people will probably be avoiding him because they assume that he's maybe a rotation risk. But with NY and Timber a lot more injury prone, I think Calafiori does just have that left back slot nailed down. Now, one area that he is falling down on is defensive contributions. He's averaging less than 5, so he's not going to get you those DEFCON points. But I think the fact that Arsenal are so good for clean sheets and he does offer you those attacking returns, it is just worth it. I've also gone for Kukurea as another premium. I think if you did want someone else in your team other than Kukurea, that's absolutely fine. But I've gone for him due to the attacking threat and the fact that Chelsea usually are quite a solid team. Rounding out the defence, I've gone for Gehi and Senesi, both at 4.7 million. And I think these players for the price, pound for pound, are probably the best defenders in FPL, just in terms of their value for money. Both have got attacking returns so far this season. Both have got defensive contributions this season, and I think if you wanted to have four defenders at the back, I wouldn't have an issue starting all four of these each week. Because it's on a wild card, I would get in Ekdal instead of Esteve. A lot of people probably own Esteve already, but Ekdal is a lot better for defensive contributions, which if you own a Burnley defender and you have to play them, you're going to want defensive contributions from them because they're not very likely to keep clean sheets, and therefore he's someone that I would just swap out on a wild card. So when we take a look at the chart, we can see defensive contributions per start versus total points. The five defenders in this team highlighted here. Now, Calafiori at the bottom right isn't getting a lot of defensive contributions. It tells me he's getting his points from clean sheets and attacking returns. So Nessie at the top of the chart is getting a lot of defensive contributions, and that tells me that's how he's scoring his points. Bournemouth aren't keeping clean sheets. But the fact that he is averaging the most defensive contributions per game is fantastic because if Bournemouth do keep a clean sheet, he's looking at probably a 10 pointer if you include potential bonus points as well. Players like Gahey, they're ranking in the middle overall, but you've got to factor in the price. A Lacroix or a Jurriën Timber, players who are scoring more than him, a Tarkowski, a Virgil van Dijk, in terms of defensive contributions. They're a lot more expensive. So when you want a cheap value defender who is going to enable you to get in more expensive options elsewhere, I think Gahey is just the best player. Ekdal is also scoring really well for defensive contributions, which we spoke about, and Kukurea is just in the middle of the pack. So you do have the freedom here to go with a different defender. That's the good thing about being able to fit Kukurea in this particular wildcard team, because if you didn't like him, well, you can go for literally any other defender in FPL. And if that other defender happens to be cheaper, then you can use that money elsewhere. So I've got the line here. Feel free to pause the video at any point to take a look at these charts a bit more in depth. But anyone to the right of this line, I would consider getting in ahead of Kukurea if you didn't want him. So a Tarkowski, a Virgil van Dijk, even a Lacroix if you wanted to double up on Palace is absolutely fine. And these are the defenders I think are really worth considering on your wildcard. So into midfield, and I've highlighted Semenyo mainly because if you don't own him already, you probably should just get him in. The Bournemouth fixtures look okay. Do I think he's going to continue to get more goals and assists than games all season? Probably not. But I think the price is still worth it. At 7.6 million, if he started the season at that, you'd still be getting him in. So I definitely wouldn't think, oh, I should have got him in at 7 million. Now he's 7.6. I've missed the boat. You haven't done that. He's really highly owned as well. So if you're looking at FPL from a more of a defensive point of view, who can hurt your rank the most if you don't own him? Semenyo is now up there just because of his increase in ownership. Elsewhere, you might think, the midfield looks a little bit, unusual. Kudus and Ndai are those cheaper options that I do think are good because not only do they enable you to get in more expensive players elsewhere, they're players who are going to be starting for their team week in, week out. Especially someone like a Kudus, I think he has that right hand side locked down for Spurs. And whilst he's a player who can score in bunches, he's someone who will get you two assists in a game, like he did in game week one, and then blank for 3 game weeks. And then he's got two assists in game week five. Chances are he might blank again for another 3 game weeks. But he does offer you that explosive threat, and you know at least he's going to be on the pitch for Spurs. And Dye is the same for Everton. Do I expect Everton to score loads of goals in a game? No. But when they do score, there's a chance that Ndai is involved. And at the price, I think he's a great pickup. And Boomo might be another surprising pick for people here. But a lot of the skill in FPL, if you can call it skill, is trying to get players in your team before they score points. Too many times, managers try and points chase, which is, they try and get these players in who have already scored points, but they're not likely to continue scoring at that rate. And Boomo is someone who hasn't got a lot of points right now, but in the eye test looks a really important part of the Man United attack. And with Man United's fixtures sort of becoming easier than what they have been, at least, I do see Mbumo being a good way into their team. And he's about 1 million cheaper than someone like a Bruno Fernandes, which again enables you to upgrade your team elsewhere. Of got Caicedo on the bench, and I really like Caicedo. Do I think he's going to score a goal every other game like he has been doing? Absolutely not. It's not a knee-jerk pick, but I do think he offers a fantastic baseline of points in terms of the defensive contributions that he offers. In terms of getting those two extra points plus potential clean sheets, when someone like a Kudus is blanking, you could start a Caicedo instead and get those higher points that are going to keep you ticking over with your overall score when your big hitters are failing to find the net. So when we take a look at the midfield chart, we've got expected goal involvements versus points per game, and these are the five players from my midfield. So again, we've got Caicedo the bottom right, and his expected goal involvements are really low. He's not going to get you those attacking returns, and you shouldn't get him in expecting as such. But what he will get you are those higher points, those 5 points every game, those 4 points every game that we spoke about, that will just keep bumping up his score. We can see that at the top of the charts, we've got Mbumo and Semenyo. Now, Semenyo is just performing head and shoulders above everyone else in terms of expected goals and his actual points. That tells me that his expected goal involvements, he is finishing and he's getting those points as a result. And Bumo is someone kind of the opposite. Still getting, the highest goal involvement so far this season, but he's not being able to convert them into points. Now, whilst that might not look great, across the course of a season, players do just tend to average their expected goal involvements, their expected goals and assists. So the fact that he's underperforming that right now is almost a good thing because he will start finding the back of the net and he will start scoring goals in the near future. I think, that's my prediction. And Diet and Kudus are just in the middle. Again, feel free to pause this video and look at the charts in depth if you think, and Diet and Kudus, they're just not for me. You can see these other players around them that will still be valid options. But I do think, especially in Bumo, Semenyo, and Caicedo, are definitely worth it on your wildcard squads. So let's take a look up front, and we're going big in the strikers. The fact that you are wildcarding right now probably means that you want Haaland in your team, and I definitely think he is a great shout for the next 3 game weeks. Last season, he did tail off after having a fantastic start. It's not a guarantee that he'll do it again. I think if you wanted Haaland in for the game week 6, 7, and 8 fixtures, absolutely fine. After that point, I would consider selling him and getting Salah back in. So just think if you're wildcarding and getting Haaland in, is there a pathway you can do that you're happy with that you can sell him and get Salah in 2 free transfers? Just bear that in mind. Gyökeres and João Pedro are the other two forwards. I think it's a fantastic front line. When we take a look at the chart and goal contributions so far this season with percentage selected by FPL managers, we can see that these are essentially the three best strikers. They're offering the most goal contributions, and not only that, they're the highest owned. Why is that important that they're highly owned? It means that if they do well and you don't own them, they're the players who are going to be hurting your rank the most. And it sounds a bit boring and a bit of a safety sort of situation, but I don't think that getting in these three players can ever be considered boring. If you do own them already, you'll be benefiting from their points. And if you don't own them, I think on a wild card, they just make the most sense. They're starting every game, they're focal points of their team's attacks, and you would consider all three of their teams to be in the top four come the end of the season. So getting in strikers from those teams is just a really straightforward situation. The only other player you could consider is Ekatike. I just don't see why you would get him in ahead of either of these three players, given his potential minutes risk at Liverpool. So let's take a look at the overall strengths and weaknesses. And the strengths are it attacks the fixture swings. We're getting in these Arsenal players, we're getting in some Bournemouth players, as well as Haaland for these upcoming fixtures. And I also think it offers some excellent depth. The bench looks great. And a lot of the time, I wouldn't have a problem starting any of these players. Some of the weaknesses, though, is that there's no Salah. And, you might not think that that's an issue at the moment, given Salah's not lack of performance because he's still got 4 attacking returns in 5 games, which is incredible, but I do think that when he has scored those points, I do understand the questions raised, but I would just have a bit of a get out plan in case Salah does go and score a hat trick and you don't own him, and all of a sudden everybody's racing to get him back in. Can you do that? Another downside is it uses the wild card, which might seem an obvious situation here, but you do have to be happy with your team for the next 10 game weeks before game week 16 when we get those 5 free transfers for the Africa Cup of Nations. So, are you happy with your squad just negotiating with free transfers? If that's the case, I think go for it. Me personally, I am considering using the wildcard this week, not because it's a popular time to use it, just because I have a lot of players in my team that I need to move on, and if I was just using free transfers, it's going to take me over a month to do so. And by that point, I could also have more injuries as well. So let me know what you think about the team. Let me know if you are wildcarding as well this game week and what your team looks like. Have I missed any players? Please do subscribe, like the video. I really do appreciate all the support. Hopefully, you're having a good game week, and I will see you in the next one.